My name is Jill Coyle, and from years of experience as a divorce attorney, I know for a fact that no one dies from divorce. The experts and I are here to show you how to not only survive, but thrive during the most difficult times. Welcome to another episode of No One Dies from Divorce podcast. I'm very, very excited to be here today to share a little bit more about divorce and what we believe is, and the topic of today is using creativity, empathy, and compromise in a divorce. Such an important topic. My special guest today, his name is Rob Jepson, and he is a mediator right here in Utah. So welcome to the show, Rob.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm really excited. We've got a really great, I think, topic to talk about. So let me just introduce you to Rob. Rob is a full-time family law mediator practicing in Utah. He earned his JD from the S.J. Quinney College of Law, University of Utah in 2018, where he focused on family law and alternative dispute resolution. Rob is passionate about helping people resolve their family conflicts as peacefully as possible, while still ensuring that they remain in control of their decisions. Outside of work, he spends time with his wife and 4 children and performs with his rock band, the Melons. Melons? Is that how you say it?
Yep.
Yes, I love it. So Rob's philosophy is that you opened your mediation practice to help people find agreeable solutions to family law problems without having to go through the court system. You believe that creativity, empathy, and a willingness to compromise can prevent unnecessary pain and expense during the divorce process. Amen. Welcome to the show, Rob.
Amen. Hey, thank you so much. It's good to be here.
Yeah. So one of the things that I think that would be really good is to lead with some statistics. So everybody knows I'm a divorce attorney. My firm, Coyle Law, one of the largest family law firms in the state of Utah. We do a lot of high conflict resolution based on the fact that people hire us because they need litigators. Mm-hmm. But about 55% of all divorces in the United States actually don't go through attorneys to resolve divorce. They usually are able to go through some process of either mediation, dispute resolution, coaching, and they're able to then come to agreements on their own. So I always love talking about this topic because, I could talk about the horrible, nasty divorces that I have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. But again, that's a small percentage of the totality of divorce. And Rob, I think that you hit it on the head when you're saying using creativity, empathy, and compromise in a divorce is so important because so many people are already doing it. But a lot of them maybe don't know how to go in the right direction or don't know how to do it, or they get bad advice. So we're here, me and Rob, to talk about those myths, to kind of talk about what we've seen in both of our lines of work, to kind of give you the best advice to navigate divorce.
Absolutely. I think that's such a great opening. I agree totally with you, Jill, that people do this work naturally. A lot of couples know how to negotiate. They know how to figure out solutions, problem solve. They often need some guidance, and that can be guidance about what are their rights, what's a fair and reasonable deal, or it can be guidance in the form of ideas and creativity and just kind of knowing the lay of the land. But one of the reasons I like your law firm and I liked your book, and one of the reasons I was excited to be on the podcast is because you hold yourselves out as being solution-oriented and using litigation when it's necessary. And sometimes it absolutely is necessary. Yeah. Sometimes you have those hideous cases where one side or the other isn't going to back down. And the last resort is fight. And that's when you hire aggressive, quick, sharp attorneys to fight for you. But in so many cases, and I don't have the statistics, but I hope it's most cases, people want to come to a solution. People want to avoid heartache and pain and financial cost and just get it figured out. So that's something I appreciate about you guys.
Thanks. One of the things too is it's like there's a lot of divorces that don't need, they don't have complex issues, and so because of that, some kind of dispute resolution or collaborative effort makes absolute sense for you. But there's also times that, and I've said this a lot, where you have complex issues, it makes sense to, just because you decide to hire an attorney or you go, more of a litigation route, does not mean that you're going to litigation. You said that exactly. We are solution-oriented firm, and we resolve probably about 89% of all of our cases outside of court. And that's important to hear, because a lot of people get so scared. Oh, if I hire an attorney, that just means that, they're going to drag it all the way to trial, and I'm not going to have control in my, own life or future of my life. And that's just not true. We're just the guidance to make sure that we protect yourself, your future, and your family, and that it's done correctly. One of the things, Rob, that I love about you, and I kind of wanted to ask you this question, is that you're an attorney and a mediator. Why do you feel like that adds an additional level of, I would say, conflict resolution and also protection in you helping people resolve their divorce?
Yeah, great question. And I have to clarify, for legal reasons, I'm not a practicing attorney.
Right.
So I went to law school, graduated, and as a law student, Utah has pretty generous rules about what law students are able to do, so long as they're supervised by an attorney. So during law school, I was appearing in court, I was representing clients, I was negotiating with the other side. And that helped me gain an appreciation for the litigation process and what it's there for. But I found that what I loved the most was just the behind the scenes negotiation. I actually didn't know what mediation was at that time. I just found that I loved getting on the phone with opposing counsel, being like, hey, let's talk. What's going on with this case? What's your client telling you? Oh, my client's telling me this. Well, let's have a conference call. Later, I found out that that's, there are names for those things. So your question was, what's the benefit of having a law background as a mediator? I think it helps me understand what the process is, the pros and cons of the process, but it also gives me language. It also helps me say, yeah, you can walk away from the table today for sure. Here's what's going to happen next if you do that. It helps me understand how judges think and work and how lawyers think and work. So, no one's an expert. I'm not an expert on all things, but it is fun to swim around in that legal pool a little bit as a mediator.
Right. And this is really actually an important tip to tell our listeners too. And I'd love to see if you disagree with me.
Okay.
But there is a difference between the way that lawyers advocate for you and mediators advocate for you. Lawyers advocate specifically for you, your future, and your family. So when I go into mediation, I specifically are looking at you as a person, your issues, and what I feel is a negotiation of making sure we protect you the utmost. Mediators, their sole purpose is to bring about a communication that is goal-oriented in coming to solutions. And it doesn't necessarily mean that the mediator is looking for your best interest or their best interest. What they're looking for is the ability to get you guys to come to the table to say, we decide that this is the best situation for us. Would you agree or disagree with my?
Oh, I absolutely agree, with the caveat that there are always some attorneys who will make things needlessly complicated.
Yes.
So there's an observation that a lot of mediators have and that I share, and that is that mediations without attorneys present can often be a lot smoother and a lot easier. But that's not purely a good thing. I think the reason it's easier is because there are fewer voices in the room. But the reason it's not as good is because neither party has that strong support telling them you have rights, you have things that you're entitled to, and telling them you need to think long term. Don't just think about today, think about the financial implications for the next 20 years. Think about the parenting implications for the next 20 years. So I love working with attorneys because they bring that. I view attorneys as defenders. They're there to defend the client's best interests and rights and make sure that they're fully informed. And that, best in a perfect world, that always informs the clients so that they can make really, really good decisions on the day of mediation.
Right. And I'll be the first one to say, like, you should never go into mediation without an attorney, without at least have speaking to an attorney. I am a huge advocate that you can't know your rights unless you know your rights. And by speaking to an attorney, I charge $300 for my consultation. I can guarantee that you're going to come out of that that consultation understanding the legal ramifications of your estate and your kids and everything going forward, that if you choose not to hire an attorney, you will be able to be more equipped to go into mediation and know what is best for you and your family. So I'm highly supportive of that. Even if it costs you a little bit of money, why would you not want to do that to just ensure you know your rights? The second tip I always tell people, don't trust Google. Google is nationwide. It's not necessarily going to be very specific for your state, your county. Sometimes our laws are so very specific to where you live. They're not updated. They're not fact checked. A lot of times Google is bringing answers from blogs of attorneys that don't update them, don't continually make sure that they're correct. Yep. And so it's bad advice. So getting an attorney like right now, to understand your rights and what it is right now is really, really important before you go into that mediation and, try to work out what I would suggest is probably one of the most important contracts of your life. The marriage certificate being the first contract, the divorce, contract being the second. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's part of a mediator's ethics to tell clients, to advise clients to get legal counsel if they can afford it. And that last part's really the catch. And this is just such an uncomfortable truth where, ideally everyone could afford an attorney for every problem that they have. If I'm having a problem with my landlord, ideally I could get some great legal advice or whatever. And definitely the same goes for family law, because I agree, this is huge, huge decisions that people are making. So I think the way I try to look at it is you should try to get all the legal advice that you can afford. If you can afford COIL law for the full duration of your case, do that because you'll be better off for it. If you can't afford that, at least do a consultation. Or sometimes during mediation, I'll say, hey, we've really hit a legal issue here that I can't advise either of you on. Do you want to try to get some attorneys on the phone right now to get some on the fly advice about this thing specifically? Or sometimes I'll say, sometimes we're close to getting a deal, but the parties are feeling uncomfortable about their rights. And I'll say, hey, let's pause. Go find an attorney, have them advise you on this deal that we're putting together. And if you're feeling comfortable, let's come back and get it done. So however much legal advice you can afford, I think is how much you should get. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. This is a good segue into my tech company called simpleending.com. And so, as a divorce attorney for the last 15 years, what I was noticing is that I was getting a lot of clients coming in with their own homemade divorce decrees, whether they did it through a mediation or did it through OCAP. That's the Utah, legal justice program that they have that the state provides. And they were just poorly written decrees. And they were having so many problems because, again, people don't think about the future, or they just weren't legally, strong enough to even hold them accountable in court. And so I set off about 3 years ago. I was like, this is such a problem. We talk all the time about the bar wanting to have access to justice, and we pay our bar fees and they always charge us money saying, oh, we have to give more access to justice. But it's so poor. It's so bad the way that it's done. And so I wanted to fix that. So I created simpleending.com, and I'm really excited because it's going to be launching here very, very soon. But it's been a 3-year journey to get here. And so simpleending.com, what I set out is I created a technology, an underlying interface that is going to have the most up-to-date form builder for divorce documents that you've ever seen. I liken it to the TurboTax of divorce, where you're going to be able to go into my program. You're going to be able to answer your questions, however complicated or easy your divorce will be. And at the end of it, if you and your spouse end up agreeing to the terms or the questions, it will then populate a attorney quality divorce decree and all of the other documents you need to get fully divorced in your state. And you'll be able to do that for a fraction of the cost of going to an attorney and having them draft up their documents. So I saw that problem, Rob, and I was like, I want to fix that. And I've noticed, I now know why no attorneys tackled this. It's cost me a lot of money to create this kind of technology.
Yeah.
It's been, it's hard because we're launching in Utah first. That makes sense. But Utah only has about 15,000 divorces a year. But then we want to go to as many states as possible. Well, that takes time. That takes money. And so it's just going to be a slow process to roll this out to make sure that we really do get access to justice to all 50 states. But I'm really, really excited about it because I, eventually will be able to go to you, Rob, and be like, hey, you're a mediator. You're really great at what you do. Let's partner up where you, mediate the cases, but then use my program to be able to create your divorce documents. You'll be able to do it in half the time. There'll be attorney quality, so you don't have to refer out to an attorney, and the clients can know that they come to an agreement that you help them get to, but they get attorney quality documents for the fraction of the price. So we're really excited. Simpleending.com. You can go to my website. You can look that up. And it's going to be live really, really soon. So that's something that I built and I'm really excited. So.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful. There's so much room for this type of innovation. And I know Utah in particular is trying to open up more space for that type of innovation with their sandbox and all that. But I think that's just great. I hope more and more people flood in and start focusing on these types of solutions, especially if they can be attorney quality, like you said. That's the hard part. That's the hard part, is having it be faster, cheaper, simpler, and still high quality. So kudos to you for tackling it.
Right. Well, and it took us literally designing our own software to do it because it hasn't been done before. But that's the whole purpose of this, is like, everybody is like, oh, COIL law, we're, the bulldogs, that's what people call us. We're aggressive litigation, but we're high conflict resolution because we get high conflict cases, high net worth. But at the end of the day, we are conflict resolution oriented. We want to be able to help you through the most trying time of your life, which is, what divorce is. Like, whether you're like excited for the divorce or not, it is going to be something that could technically affect the trajectory of your future, and you want to make sure you're protected.
Yeah.
So one of the things I wanted to ask you, Rob, is like, when somebody's like, okay, we don't want to hire attorneys, but we really do want to go through a mediation process or something, what advice would you give somebody to how do they find a legitimate mediator? Because I'm going to be honest, like, there's a lot out there that say they're good at what they do, but they're not good at what they do.
Oh man. Yeah. What a good question. I'm going to take a step back and answer from like a pretty broad lens. I think everyone would agree with this. It's really important to find the right professionals when you're going through your divorce. Like we said earlier, if you're in a horrible situation, you need a really aggressive team who will fight to get you out. If you're in a pretty amicable, peaceful situation, you might be fine with just a soft-spoken mediator who can be like, okay, yeah, let's run the numbers, let's calculate some alimony and get you out of here. Or if you have really complex a financial situation, like you co-own multiple businesses or you have investments and stocks to worry about, maybe you need a certified divorce financial analyst to be part of your team to help you figure that out. So it's a really tricky question. Unfortunately, my answer is I think it's case by case. Do you need the full swath? Do you need financial analysts and therapists and reunification therapists and mediators and attorneys involved? Or can you just pick one? I think I have two pieces of advice. My first piece of advice is call around and interview. get a feel for the people that you're trying to work with. Some of them will charge for that consultation, some won't. If they're charging for the consultation, it's because they value their time. It's not a bad thing that they're charging. So call around. The second thing is to vet, because you're right that unfortunately there are people in the market who don't have sufficient training to be doing what they're doing. But the mediation market is pretty loosely regulated at this point in Utah. There's not much hammer to come down on people who are doing it improperly. So you do need to vet, you do need to ask around. Anyway, kind of a long answer, but I don't know how to answer it simply.
Yeah, I would also just add to that, like looking for somebody that actually is within a legal scope is also very, very helpful. Because you get mediators that come from more of a social work or therapeutic, which I think those are important, and they really help with like dispute resolution when it comes to like parenting disputes and stuff. But when it comes to understanding the legal field, usually they are not as up to date with it because they're not from a legal background. So finding somebody like Rob who understands, like, even if you're not practicing law, you understand legal ramifications. You are up to date. I would assume you're reading the family law, case law, the appellates, the appellate case law. You're meeting with a bunch of attorneys in Utah, so you're consistently, I guess, getting yourself more knowledgeable about the laws in Utah, which help you then be able to do solutions to these clients that are very, fact-based in what the specific law is going to be in that state. So,
yeah, absolutely. When I was very first starting out, I called a bunch of experienced mediators and asked for their advice. And they asked me, Rob, what do you think are your strengths? And I was like, well, I'm really creative. I'm really out of the box, and I'll think of zany solutions. And the feedback I got was, that's great. You need that creativity, but also you have to operate within the confines of the law. If you get too creative, then a judge won't sign off on it. Or if you get too creative, then you might not be thinking about all the implications of your solution, and you might be creating a much bigger mess than the one that you're solving.
Yes.
So it's a pretty fine balance. You got to operate within the rules and find the creative solutions within that. It's challenging.
Yeah, absolutely. So how would you advise somebody to prepare to come into mediation with you?
Oh man, such a good question. I'll start with pragmatic, and then I'll get to the emotional stuff. Pragmatically, I would say have your finances in order. Know what your debts are that you're arguing about. Know what assets you're arguing about. Have some bank account statements. If you need to pull a credit report to see what your soon-to-be ex-spouse might have hiding away in some account somewhere that you don't know about, do that. Have your pay stubs so that you can calculate child support properly. So that's what I would say to come prepared with on a pragmatic note. On an emotional note, okay, here we go. Here's the deep dive. It's a tough day. Mediation is a tough day because no one wins. There's no one runs a victory lap at the end of mediation. Everyone's exhausted. Everyone feels like they've compromised at least a little bit. You're really confronted with the reality of wow, I am now more poor than I used to be. I have less time with my kids than I used to. I'm going to have to move out. It's just a lot to process in one day. And hopefully your attorney or other, divorce professional has helped prepare you for this. But I would try to go in as centered as you can be, knowing that you're not going to quote unquote win. And you're not going to leave elated. My goal as a mediator is to help people leave feeling at least comfortable. Do you know what I mean? If this wasn't the best day of my life, hopefully this wasn't the most horrible day of my life either. It's just somewhere in the middle. So actually, if you'll humor me, Jill, I want to share the metaphor that I use with my kids.
Okay.
So I'm a dad and I have 4 kids. My wife and I have been married 13 years. And my kids are curious about what I do for work. Dad, what do you do? And, I used to just say, well, I help people get divorced. But every time I said that, I saw the lights in their eyes dimming just slightly. Oh, our dad is a villain. So now the way I explain it to them is like this. I say, it's like if you're trying to cook eggs and one of the eggs is rolling off the counter and you know that it's going to hit the floor and splatter. My job as mediator is I see those eggs that are falling, and my job is to catch them and very slowly and gently lower them to the floor so that they don't break. And that's truly how I feel about it. I mean, mediation can feel like it's like an emergency, like, oh no, pain is happening. It's gonna hit the fan. So how can we at least mitigate this and help people at least, leave here walking on their own 2 feet and feeling like they have a plan for the future?
Right. And I always say, like, going to mediation too early in a process, especially if your client's not going through the grieving process, like they haven't even gotten to acceptance yet, you're not going to be able to get things settled. So, I have attorneys that are like, oh, we should rush into mediation. And I'm like, nope, it's not going to get anywhere. I need my client to be more in a place where they're actually willing to settle. So I absolutely agree with the emotional part of it. So if you're thinking, well, we don't need attorneys, we're just going to try to resolve this, you need to be asking the question, like, you might be in that spot of where you believe you can resolve things, but how is your spouse looking? Are they still talking about, going to therapy together? Are they still, wanting to try to make things work? Are they still really, really angry? If they're still in this, too early in the grief process of divorce, mediation could fail. And, or they could sign something and then afterwards completely regret it and then go hire an attorney. And then it just becomes this big, huge show of trying to get that stipulation that they signed under pressure, set aside. And so you just don't want to sign too early.
I love that. And actually, you just answered a question for me, Jill, that I've been chewing on for a while. My next door neighbor here in my office is a therapist. And he was asking, like, how many sessions does it take to mediate a divorce case? And I was telling him, well, strangely, it's usually one. It's usually one mediation session where we resolve, all the terms of the divorce, custody, child support, alimony, division of property, selling the house. It's like all these huge things. And I was telling him, like, I think perhaps it would be wise to spread it out or something. But we don't really do it that way. It tends to be a one-day thing. But I think, Jill, you just helped resolve that concern for me, which is it's more about timing.
Yeah.
When you're ready, that's when you come sit down, so that it's realistic to get it done in a day and have it stick. Right. So thanks. I learned a lot being on your podcast today.
One of the questions I wanted to ask you next is, how do you make mediation effective? And I'm just going to go first with kind of my tips of how we can do this. One of the things I always tell my clients is that you need to know your issues. Okay. So write down every issue that you believe you have in your divorce. So, 10 or 15, whatever it is, but there's your issues. And then I make them rank them 1 to 15, 1 being the most important, 15 being the least important. And I go up and I look at the top 3 and I say, listen, these are the 3 topics we are going to concentrate when it goes to mediation. The rest of these are all negotiable. And I need you to be in that position where you recognize that we're going to, the fight's going to be over the 3 things, but the rest doesn't matter because you've ranked it. And that really helps clients put in a perspective of what's really, really important. Because in mediation, a lot of times we'll get some of the really big, heavy stuff out of the way. And then all of a sudden we come down and we're like crying over a teapot. Or, a picture that they really, really want. And a lot of times it's like almost going to blow up the mediation because they just feel like they've given so much. And so I always go back with my client and say, no, remember our list, personal property or stuff was like number 8. This is not, what you need to be hanging your hat on. You got relatively close to the 3 things that were really important. And that really helps bring my clients back into perspective to recognize, okay, I can do this. I can finish it out.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. I can't improve upon what you just said. I think prioritizing is crucial. And I agree with you that I would say almost every single mediation things seem to be going basically smoothly until the end. And then it's the
Yeah.
teapot or the TV or the dog. Well, dogs I can understand.
Dogs are really important.
Dogs are important. I think I'll add a dimension to what you're saying. And that is that it's extremely difficult, but also extremely important to separate the emotion of divorce from the stuff in divorce. So my perception is what's really going on there is you get down to the teapot and, either party could be feeling like, wait, we're almost done. I still feel hurt. I still feel abandoned. I still feel betrayed. So no, he can't have the teapot. That's mine. And that's a totally normal, totally reasonable response because this is a painful thing that people are going through. So I'm no therapist, but I attempt to say like, hey, this teapot's worth $20. And hopefully I'm staying in my lane enough by doing this, but I do try to tell clients like, hey, I just gotta like level with you human to human. If you're feeling horrible right now, that makes perfect sense because this is a hard day. But I do try to encourage them to say like those feelings, you get to keep those. You're allowed to feel horrible. You're allowed to feel betrayed and hurt and upset. It's not about the teapot. So let's let that go. Let's move forward and get through this. And then if we need therapy at the end, I've got a list of referrals for you. Yeah.
I actually, one of my biggest tips I give is you really shouldn't go through divorce alone. And so you should always have a therapist or a divorce coach, somebody there to help with that emotional side. Because a lot of times people convolute their emotions with the pragmatic side of divorce. A lot of times it's just math, but they just want to throw in everything else. And so I always talk to my clients about, listen, we just need to get your emotions under check. We need to get you moving through the grief cycle so that you can start thinking pragmatically, because then you're going to realize this is okay. And that what we're getting you or what we're talking to you about is going to be okay.
Love that.
And this is like a transition into my last question is just like how to stay calm and focused in mediation. Because, it's like you said, it's a tough day. You go through every emotion on the books. It's very expensive, especially if you have a mediator and an attorney that you're paying for. And it just can be just emotionally tolling, exhausting. And just like you said, it's like the breakup of the family, breakup of, friends. And it's just really tough. So what are some tips that you can give to like help you stay calm and focused in mediation?
Yeah, I think the only real tip I have is to try to think of it as a beginning. And I know that's totally counterintuitive because your world is absolutely crumbling around you. You spent years or decades building up this marriage. You didn't anticipate it ending. So it is an ending. But I think when people can begin to think of it as a beginning, like, wow, I get to go to sleep whatever time I want. I get to watch whatever TV show I want. I get to date whoever I want. I get to think and say and listen to whatever I want. I get to stand on my own 2 feet and have my own career. If we can nudge our thinking in that direction, I think that's very empowering and also very accurate, because as much as it's an ending, it is also a beginning.
Yeah. I say that all the time. I daydream about having 50-50 with my kids. I would love to do that without the whole divorcing my husband part. I don't know. I don't think I can make that work. But the other thing that I talk to my clients about too is like remembering you have to separate, like, when you get divorced, a lot of times you look at your spouse as like this crappy person. Like, I just dislike how you treated me, or you clearly don't get along. That's why you're moving toward divorce.
Yeah.
But I always, talk to them about, you have to separate the crappy husband, the crappy wife with the parent that they are. Yeah. And a lot of times you can be a crappy dad, but a crappy husband, but a really good dad. Mm-hmm. And you have to put that in perspective as well, because the things that they did to you or that you felt personally betrayed by did not roll into their parenting or their ability to parent after the divorce. And that's the best thing about divorce. You get to lose the crappy husband. You get to not be with the crappy wife. But if you have kids together, unfortunately, you don't get to lose that parenting role. And so if you can keep those perspectives separate. The other thing that I always say is, like, if you can think of one thing that you guys probably have in common when it comes to your kids, is that at the end of the day, do you guys want what's best for your kids? And almost everybody will say, yeah, he wants what's best for my kids. A lot of times we get, oh, he's a narcissist. He just wants to hurt the kids because it hurts me. And those are special circumstances. I wrote a whole book chapter on that. But at the end of the day, if you can separate that and you can get to that commonality of believing that you both just want what's best for your kids, it is something that you can build upon. And it becomes that you don't have to have a personal relationship. You can have a co-parenting relationship. And that's great, because co-parenting doesn't mean they have control over you or what you do personally, but at least you guys can work together for what's best for your kids.
Yeah, I think that's perfect. I think that's great.
Yeah. And then, at the end of the day, when the mediation comes to a close and you guys have an agreement and you're getting ready to sign it, it can be magical, just like you said. Like, a divorce doesn't have to be this shameful topic. I am so sick of people when they say, oh, I'm divorced, and they have like a shameful connotation on it. I'm like, dude, that 50% of all marriages end up in divorce. Like, we need to stop looking at it as, oh, I'm so embarrassed by this, but look at it as, hey, I don't care that you've been divorced. I want to know, what did you learn from your divorce, and what are you doing now to be a better person, a better parent, a better human being? If we can take it as this platform to say, I'm going to stand up and use this as a clean slate to become a better version of myself that I never could in my marriage, then that's going to be a pretty powerful movement, Rob. And we're going to have actually better humans out there doing good for this world, doing good for their parent or their children than we could have if they just stayed in these crappy marriages.
Absolutely. Maybe this is a weird perspective, but it's probably one you and I have in common, where when I meet someone who tells me they're divorced, I think my first feeling is actually like, oh, wow, like, that's so great that you stood up for yourself and you are living life according to your own terms. And I bet you feel so empowered having gone through that. That's kind of like my first thought now.
I love that.
Ideally, we'll be in a world where, whether you're married or single, you feel fully in control of your life. It's tricky. It's tricky to live with someone and share your life and also be fully realized and independent. But hopefully we're moving in that direction more.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I absolutely enjoyed this conversation, Rob. I love what you're doing. I look forward to working together a little bit in the future, especially with our firms and you as a mediator. So tell all of our listeners, how can they find you?
Yeah, if you want to learn more about me, my website is robjepsonmediation.com, and that's Jepson, Jepson. I also have an Instagram account where I post little videos and stories about, mediation and the divorce process, and that's just at Rob Jepson Mediation. Or you can shoot me an email. It's robjepsonmediation@gmail.com. And I'll say, and I know a lot of divorce professionals feel this way, I'm happy to chat. Divorce is so overwhelming. I think, all the divorce professionals I know don't want people to feel alone. So if you just need to chat and have a first contact, if you need someone to tell you, yeah, use Jill Coyle, give me a call. I'll tell you that.
And if you just need a consult with me, I'm happy. I still do all the consults at my firm. I'll talk to you for an hour and give you all of my legal advice that I can within that hour. It will be worth the while. So, Rob, thank you for joining us today on another episode of No One Dies from Divorce. We're excited to bring you the latest and greatest information, all things divorce, about prior, during, and after divorce, to make it so that you can use this as a platform to become the best version of yourselves. Thanks so much, Rob.
Thanks so much.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed, please subscribe, follow, and share. I'd love to hear your questions and feedback. You can contact me at community@jillcoyle.com. See you next time.
I am an attorney, but I am not your attorney. Any advice given on the podcast is general and shall not be construed as legal advice.